Are you filled with fear, doubt, worry about the future of our country? Do you feel the urgency to act before it's too late? If yes, then this podcast is for you. It's time for us to confront the critical issues threatening our nation's fabric, our democracy itself, regardless of our political stance. If you are ready to face reality, handle the tough questions, and find real solutions, then here's your host, Debilyn.
Welcome to Terrified Nation podcast. I'm your host, Debilyn Molyneux. Can we save it? That's what we're exploring in this podcast series. And for me, the answer is a resounding yes, we can. And we must. Now, this show is where we explore alternatives to being afraid. And we ask ourselves the questions, now what? As we interview guests who have gone from being angry or afraid or even hopeless to become advocates for our nation so we can live into a better future. And we can live into the promise of our founders, each one of us dedicating ourselves to a better future. I do like to start each show with a question that we'll explore together. Today's question is, how do you accept the current moment with all of its worries and still hope for a better future? Now, joining me today is David Searby. He's a former U.S. Foreign Service Affairs and Economic Officer, focusing mostly on Latin America. And David has had extensive exposure on issues related to sustainable development, including at-risk youth empowerment, support for nonprofits, and civil society. He's also worked with the United Nations development programs and on public-private partnerships. He worked on a sustainable tourism project in the Dominican Republic. And since 2020, David has turned his focus to domestic peace issues by hosting the Faith and Peace concert series. He lives in Chevy Chase, Maryland with his family. David, welcome to the Terrified Nation podcast.
Thank you, Debbie Lan. It's great to talk to you again.
So you're here because you've agreed to be interviewed about your preferred future and to be part of this national research project. And this is about what you prefer, what you want for your future, not about what is likely or possible. Got that?
Yep.
All right. So in order to see what your preferred future is, we're going to do a little time travel here in our magic Zoom time machine. And we're going to stay within your current lifespan, but go somewhere in the future. We recommend somewhere between 2 and 20 years. What sounds right for you?
20.
20. All right.
Realistically, 2. I could do 2, but we could do both or either one.
You have so many people pick somewhere in the middle, so it really doesn't matter. It's up to you how far into the future you want to go.
I will say I'll do the 20.
We're recording this in the last days of 2024, but I'm going to take us to early 2045. So we're going to set the dial for early 2045. And let's go ahead and take a few deep breaths as our Zoom time machine takes us into the future. And when we get there, David, I really want you to think about or observe your older self, your 20-year older self. And you and I are just going to continue talking as we watch your older self in early 2045. Got it?
Yep.
All right. So here we are. We're pulling into the 2045 station. Ding! Here we go. We're climbing out of the Zoom time machine. And the first question that I have is just like, well, where are we in early 2045? Where do you live?
I probably will continue to be living in our nation's capital or this immediate area or somewhere nearby. So where I see myself in 20 years is a world where we've taken some of the more toxic areas that have caused us to not be able to have good conversations and not be able to really just agree to disagree, you know?
Yeah, well, and I want to like bring it down from this
Yeah.
kind of etheric into like your personal experience. Like as you walk around your neighborhood, what's
Right.
there?
So when I see myself in this future, I see more venues where we have people respecting political differences. And
Okay.
I see new avenues, social media, and creative ways to get people to not hate each other. I think we're going to go. We'll have passed through some dark times. We'll be in some hopeful times.
Okay. All right. Any physical characteristics of your surroundings as we take our first look in 2045?
Well, I'm hoping, that I'm still able to walk, and I think I will be. And my physical surroundings will have my children and grandchildren.
Mm,
I'm constantly thinking about for them and thinking of ways that we can have intelligent conversations, not just for the next election but 20 years down the road.
yeah.
I see a turning of a corner in 20 years where we're actually starting to address those long-term issues and being empathetic about it. I see a world with more empathy and
Mm,
understanding that we can just stop talking to each other and everything goes downhill, and it will if we don't learn how to talk to each other. Or we can have more ways where the best ideas, no matter where they come from, in a town square, people talk to each other face to face, and there's
yeah.
respect. And if you are a total jerk in a town square, at the very least, you'll become unpopular. Maybe if you have a business, your business will go out of business. Well, in my future, we the town square of ideas takes into that idea of don't be a jerk, and there are
So
consequences for being a jerk.
so what I'm hearing is that in your community 20 years from now, what you're observing is that people are in the town square talking with each other. Your children and grandchildren are participating in those conversations. Respectful disagreement is like the standard of by which we engage in politics.
It's different. In the future, we have more of a respect for that understanding that everybody kind of has de facto veto power. And unless we find ways to bring more people onto solutions, if you just have unilateral solutions, they won't go anywhere. Everyone
Right.
has enough negative power to stop good things from happening. So we need to find a way to do positive things that benefit broader groups of people. And part of it is just messaging, but part of it is actually finding ways that our grand schemes that we think are so important can actually we found the way in the future where we actually figure out a way to have a better future. In my future, there's an organization called Rotary, and which you've wonderfully spoken at my Rotary Club, Debilyn. There's a wonderful organization called Rotary that has stepped forward and has, 20 years after a very divisive and partisan time, this organization really stepped up and showed how its values can unite people. So I
Well,
see
so
a future where
to that
Rotary
end,
is a much those kinds of organizations, those nonpartisan, bread and butter, let's fix problems kinds of organizations get together and are empowered in that future.
there's a timeless piece of Rotary that I absolutely love, and it's the four-way test.
I was going to bring it up, but you
I
did.
was gonna ask you if you would share with people because it sounds like what you're describing in 2045, what you're observing from your older self,
Right.
is the world that lives by the four-way test.
I'll say it real quickly, and then let me get into it a little bit because there's some really good reflections on it.
Okay.
Rotaries, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it fair to all concerned? Or is it beneficial to all concerned? So the second one is fair and the fourth one is beneficial. So let me go, we start with truth, because without truth, is it the truth? That's number one. And notice that all of these four principles are questions. They're not
Yeah.
saying you speak the truth. No, you ask yourself, what is the truth? And be open to changing your mind. Secondly, is it fair? Is it fair to all concerned? That's critical. Are you doing something that's terribly unfair? Thirdly, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Obviously, in this day and age, when we're using such toxic language, we're forgetting that ability. And finally, the fourth one, often the unbeloved fourth stepchild, is it beneficial to all concerned? It sounds like kind of a repetition of number two, fair. I beg to differ. The main reason it's so important today is when we come up with these great big strategies, the fourth one allows you to say, all right, well, we've got this great plan. Is it benefiting everybody? Well, guess what? Unless you find a way to have your plan benefit maybe this sector or that sector or more people, it'll get blocked in this world where negative power is so strong. And more, when we see a project that's going forward that doesn't benefit my tribe, even if it's a great project and incredibly effective use of money, we try to block it because it's not building my tribe. It's not supporting my tribe. So that's why the rotary four-way test is so important, and why we need to be humble in applying it and constantly questioning whether we're living up to the four-way test. Anyway, that's the four-way test.
So
in my world, the groups like Rotary, Lions Club, Optimist International, the small little group that I never heard of, the service organizations have taken a step up, and they are part of the bond, the glue that holds us together.
So here we are, we're observing your 20-year-older self.
Yes.
You're living in a society that lives by the Rotary four-way test. We've got people interacting in the town square in a respectful manner, etc.
Right.
What will you be most proud of, David?
The same thing I'm probably proud of now, that I don't know how I did it, but I got my kids to drink the Kool-Aid.
Now, which Kool-Aid is this? Because Kool-Aid sometimes has a negative connotation.
I have 5 children, different ages, and they're very decent people. And I think they understand the need to rise above the stuff that divides us. And, I have kids on different, they don't all think the same politically, but they're all incredibly kind people. And I think that what they're going to be, I'll be most proud of my children, to be honest with you, just because I think they're going to go on and be part of that glue that holds our country together in different ways, in very different ways.
So as you're observing your children 20 years from now, and that's really what you're most proud of. You mentioned grandchildren earlier.
I'm a grandpa now. Woohoo!
Congratulations.
Yay.
Talk about family-wise that you're proud of in 2045.
Well, I think that they will, whether they're dedicated themselves professionally or not, they're going to be active civically, and they're going to be, again, part of that ability to have those conversations. I have a son who's an incredible business person, and I think he's great common sense. And I have another child who's deeply into issues of justice for Palestinians and stuff. So and ever in between. I think that the kids are going to be, the key to taking the platform that we create to think ahead. Because right now we're just thinking to the next election. Right now we're just thinking of how we can defeat our political opponents and just crush them, and who cares about the truth and who cares about anything. And they're going to be thinking down the future, in part because there's so much age difference between them, but they share that. They have ones that are thinking, they have to think 30, 40, 60 years down the road, and other ones that just looking more, where I am now, that kind of thing. So I think that's where I see hope, is taking our children and making them understand the importance of rising above what's separating us now.
And you're most proud that you've successfully done that with your kids.
20 years from now, I am very proud of that. And I'm proud from my personal point of view, if in my future, I've actually taken new tools and gotten some support and shared some ideas of ways to get what I often call the kumbaya organizations more attention and more recognition of the work that they do in a way that is social media savvy and is appealing to younger people. And so it starts and goes in that direction.
Yeah, so I want to kind of, there's a couple of times that you've mentioned social media, and here, as we sit here in late 2024, early 2025, social media has not benefited society as a whole, has not helped do the bridge building work or civil society work that you and I have been
in a net sense. In a net, it has its isolated.
Yeah. So, but 20 years from now, you keep referencing social media, and so 20 years from now, how does social media do that?
Social media does that through a combination of, first of all, finding the ways to make, right now, anger and divisiveness and going down the rabbit holes of your own partisan politics, where you just shut out information that doesn't jive with your worldview. That's where social media is making its money right now. I quite frankly envision a combination of just creativity and artisticness that starts making the alternative of people actually finding areas of agreement fun and kind of interesting, and again, more entertaining and click worthy. At the same time, I do think there's a role for government. I do think that cigarettes cause harm, right? What do? We tax them. Well, social media causes harm. And what I would do is create a world, in my world, there is a major tax on these huge social media hubs that they can write off that tax by literally creating programs that create the opportunity for people to agree, disagree. I think that future is possible, where you put it in their hands to find the mechanisms to get people to talk to each other.
Right.
And
right.
otherwise, guess what? You're harming our country, and we're going to get a little bit of your money, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos,
Zuckerberg. Don't forget
Zuckerberg, Mr. Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
You have a lot of, and it's not because we hate them or
no, of course not.
So
I want to pull us down out of our own rabbit hole here, where we've gotten really theoretical instead of specific to your life.
Right. Got it.
And I want to move on to the next question here, which is, observe your 20-year older self with your kids, and you're still in the DC metro area. You have a 20-year-old granddaughter and maybe some more. How do you spend your day?
I would dream of my ideal job would be running trips, bipartisan trips to Washington.
Okay.
I love the idea of. I used to work on Capitol Hill on the issue of Cuba, and the way you worked on Cuba is you had many Democrats who wanted to change our Cuba policy, but in order to join the Cuba caucus, you had to find a Republican who would join with you. I would create bipartisan trips to Washington focused on non-controversial issues, like service organizations, like supporting Rotary and that kind of thing. And I would spend the day bringing people into Washington to just work on simple problems in a bipartisan manner.
So you just took a trip to the past real quick, and we're trying to take a trip to the future.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In my future, I'm running that kind of program where I'm bringing in people to Washington to teach our legislatures and leaders how people in the rest of America actually work together on stuff.
Yeah. Well, and so I want to get also a little bit more personal if we can, David. Like, when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do?
Well, I'd probably do some yoga.
Okay.
I would do some yoga because I think that it's important, not for just your physical well-being, but it's more getting grounded and centered and avoiding the constant buzz of distraction and staying focused on these kinds of goals. That's important. That's what I would do. I would do yoga and prayer. And I really love I love to start out with a little bit of online exchange with people of faith who are optimistic and share their thoughts, and that's the way I start my day.
Well, that's a beautiful way to start your day, with some self-care and centering and grounded and faithfulness, devotion. Like, I'm hearing all these really yummy words, which is how I love to start my day. It's why they sound so yummy. And then you get into your work day, or you pause for some breakfast. You get into your work day where you're hosting these bipartisan trips. At the end of your work day, what do you do?
I like to cook. I think my favorite part of cooking is to, instead of going to, like in the future, instead of going to an all-inclusive for a big family trip, we rent an Airbnb somewhere beautiful, and we go see the area around us, and we're having fun in the area around us. but then we all congregate in the Airbnb and everyone's cooking and helping and TV's playing and we're playing games and we're playing board games and we're doing all these things as a family and just laughing together and cooking. We're watching American Dream Chef on TV. I'm watching this show that I gave away for free. I didn't try to make money of it. I just wanted somebody else to do it and somebody else got the credit for it and the money. But at least I'm seeing in the future where we have these really cool, creative ways of getting us to invest in our youth, invest in education, to see the rewards of creating opportunities for everybody.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that also as one of the things you might be really proud of in 24.
I think also in the future, realistically, and this what I'm about to say may piss off people on many different sides of the political spectrum. We're seeing really creative programs to address past. We've seen the past consequences of racial injustice. We're addressing them through non-racial means. Means that don't directly target people by their skin, but effectively create the opportunity for people who have been shut out and have been kept out, but they benefit everybody who needs help.
Yeah.
And we're in a much more, our society recognizes that we need to invest. It's a recognition of a simple proposal. We give people the ability to advance based on their potential. It's a common human resource HR idea in the Foreign Service. We had an entire section of our evaluations talking about performance versus potential. When we look at literally the entire evaluation was divided into what you've actually done and what your potential is. Well, I think when you look at people's potential, so in my future, we're recognizing people based on their potential, not by the color of their skin, but where they come from and what they've achieved at that time.
So how will you feel most of the time in 2045? What do you observe for your older self?
I feel better because what gives people so much angst, I just feel better. In the future, I'm able to have, we've sort of taken these basic guidelines on how to disagree agreeably, and we've learned from it. We don't keep on making the same mistakes. In my future, not at all based on my experience at the Commanders game with the Eagles yesterday, but in the future, I'm at a Commanders and Eagles game, and there's a somewhat jerk Eagle fan behind me. And instead of just turning around and saying, don't be a jerk, Eagles fan, I find a nice way of saying, hey, buddy, it's 2 days before Christmas and Hanukkah and the holidays. Why don't you just cheer for your team and let's all have fun here? That's the way I'm in the future. And then he goes, oh, you're right. Yeah, I was being a jerk. And that's my future.
I just want to note for my friends and listeners in Philadelphia, you all have a reputation for being the fans that say it the loudest, the roughest, the meanest.
On purpose. That's the point.
On purpose. And it's part of the ethos of the Philadelphia Eagles fans. So now that we're here on the Eagles fans, I can also see you turning around and saying, hey, great job living up to your reputation as an Eagles fan.
That's humor. That's
and just accepting them for being.
Yes, that's one of our tools for the future is humor. We're going to learn how to use humor to lower tensions.
So we started with the question, how will you feel most of the time? And then we started dissing on Eagles fans. So I want to come back to as you're observing your older self, not at a football game.
Right.
How do you feel most of the time?
I just feel more hopeful. I think a lot of people right now, in the future, we're going to be more hopeful because the best ideas, we have this feeling like the best ideas will rise. And we don't know what they are because our own minds are open and we're willing to change our views based on new information. But we just have this common feeling like there's goodwill behind our policy making, both at the higher levels and at the people level, because we realize this idea. We've realized from the past that just this idea of just destroying the other side, no matter what they do or say, it's not going to help us come up with the best policies. Nobody has a monopoly on the best ideas.
Well, can you identify for me in 2045, what are your 3 to 5, it's an arbitrary number, but 3 to 5 priority values? And you might say qualities, if that's a better word for you.
Well, as I mentioned, the number one is empathy.
Okay.
Starting out with the idea of demystifying, de-stereotyping, and in the future we're actually trying to understand where people are coming from. And because we have this social media environment that exposes us to the humanity of people who don't think like us, we have more empathy.
Right. Okay.
Secondly, I would say it's an open-mindedness about the truth, seeking the truth, but realizing it we don't know the truth. It's this idea of truth with values, where truth is truth in terms of your values and what you stand for, but actual facts you're willing to change where you see facts laying and that point
Okay.
maybe in a different direction of where you should go. So empathy, truth, and I would say the final value that I see in the future is sustainability, and this
Okay.
idea of if you have something you're doing, we have started to learn that you can't just see how it will impact us now in the next couple of years. How is this going to be affecting us 20, 30, 40 years from now? Because I think we're going to be going through some rough times where the lack of a vision of sustainability,
Yeah.
environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, sustainability in general, because remember, it's not just the environment; it's jobs, it's a business environment
Yeah.
that's positive. We're going to see the sustainability issue as complex.
So, what does the community that supports this future that you've just envisioned need to include or provide for your vision to be possible?
Well, I think it needs to be that partnership. It starts with that partnership between the government, the private sector, and civil society.
Yeah. So again, you're envisioning here at this kind of systems level, and I want to bring it back down to the personal for a second.
Personal, yeah.
Yeah. And so, what does your community need to support for you personally to live the life that you're picturing here?
I think in a community level, one of the most important things we could do between now and the next 20 years when my Shangri-La has come is have faith-based organizations really change and use faith. And that's what when we talked a little bit about the January 5th event that we're going to be doing. Faith-based organizations need to change at a community level. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, and his quote is often used in the future, there's no more segregated time in America than 11 a.m. on a Sunday.
Right.
And so in the future, we're not just focused on making that less true with congregations that are racially diverse. We're looking at ways to, and I know this sounds crazy, have congregations that value political diversity. Just like I believe Rotary clubs should value political diversity like we do gender, racial, religious diversity. We should make our Rotary clubs open to people from different political persuasions. Every club should be like that. I think every congregation should try to not just be a mouthpiece for a political point of view. And the way we start there is we establish relationships amongst our faith-based organizations with each other, with other congregations who don't see eye to eye with us.
Mm.
First, we just see, in my future, we have constant exchanges with congregations who do not necessarily see eye to us.
Yeah, well, and I just want to, I'm having this like mix of swirl of pictures and feelings going through as you're describing this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something in what you're saying about being able to feel safe with it, with your in group, if you will, and know that there is goodwill with other in groups that are different from yourself, right? So there's a place for us to mingle and explore diversity and have disagreement and still have goodwill. And there
Yep.
are places where we can feel safe and belonging in a way that our human spirit longs for.
And the way we do that is we don't try to go in and start having open political discussions with congregations and
Of
like,
course not.
no, you just find what can we do? Let's work on this project in your area and this project in my area together, and let's support each other.
Let's have some food.
Let's break bread together. Let's
Yes.
break bread together and just talk as human beings. And you are quite familiar with all the organizations that excel in this area
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that help these kinds of meetings to actually have success.
All right, so we're down to the last question. And this is where I want you to talk a lot about the work that you're currently doing. And so we're going to come back to 2024, early 2025.
Got it.
And is there anything that you are doing now or that you will do in the near future to co-create the community you just outlined and identified that will support you in 2045?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to just outline. I've mentioned Rotary. I think that's I'm working with Rotary because I do think that Rotary is one of the great organizations that are the glue that kind of hold our country together. You have people from different political persuasions coming together and working on common areas that are important. I love. I'm starting to get to know the George Mason University Carter Center for School of Diplomacy. Amazing, exciting stuff. Great possibilities we're doing now and the future. But the main thing I wanted to talk to you about is an event that I started 4 years ago called the Faith and Democracy Interfaith Prayer Vigil. So on January 6th of 2022, we held our first interfaith vigil on the mall, the National Mall, right in front of the U.S. Capitol Dome. And we had prayer and music, and people of faith came together to show how their faith perspectives made them uniters and not dividers. We had great music, we had people of faith. Since then, it's grown. I've been very fortunate that the Franciscan Action Network has taken over the lead. They're bigger than Faith and Peace concerts, and they have taken over the lead. I'm working with them. And we, this year, along with the Franciscan Action Network, we're very blessed to have the national nonprofit Sojourners join us for an interfaith prayer vigil at 3:30 p.m. on the National Mall. We'll be meeting at 7th Street, right in the middle of the National Mall, right on the grassy area on the middle, right as you're right in between the Washington Monument and the Capitol. And we have different faith leaders joining us who will use sacred scripture and their faith to talk about why they support democracy, peace, and justice. So some of the speakers we have Carol Zen from the National. She's probably the lead, the top nun in all of the United States. The Reverend Adam Taylor, he is the head of Sojourners. The wonderful Imam Dr. Talib Sharif of the Nation's Mosque. We have Darcy Hirsch from the National Council of Jewish Women, and maybe we're working on one more Jewish speaker. And we have the Reverend Leslie Copeland Toon from the National Council of Churches. All these people will be taking their sacred scripture and talking about why it leads them to support peace and justice. It's going to be live on the National Mall at 3:30 p.m. on Sunday, right before they do the Electoral College stuff on January 6th. And it's also going to be live streamed. So if you want to find out more information about it, go to faithinpeaceconcerts.org, faithinpeaceconcerts.org, and you'll have all the information about how you could tune in live or via live stream.
So for the podcast and for people who are going to be listening to this after the January 5th event,
yes,
how can they go back and stream it? Will it be on a YouTube channel? Will it be at the online?
It'll be on the it'll be highlighted on the Faith and Peace Concerts website, and also if you just go to the Franciscan Action Network website and their YouTube channel, it'll be on there too.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you, David. Well, I would like to end our interview today, David, with an invitation.
Sure.
And this invitation is based in neuroscience, and it's to spend 5 minutes a day, maybe when you're doing that Savasana thing after yoga. But think about this future, your future self that you've just outlined, and feel those feelings, and include a sense of awe and wonder that we were able to move from these currently divisive and troubled times, as you've kind of foreseen for the next few years, to this community that lives by the four-way test that you've also outlined. So drop in this sense of awe and wonder as you're spending 5 minutes a day living, if you will, in your future. Neuroscience shows us that when we spend as little as 5 minutes a day it impacts our brain in such a way that we start to subconsciously choose options that will lead us to that future that we've been envisioning. So we can choose the future we want instead of the dystopian options that are presented to us today.
Amen.
And listeners, if you would like to participate in this national research project, please visit americanfuture.us and click on Share Your Future Story. And that'll take you to a way that you can participate in the research itself. David, thank you so much for sharing your preferred future with the Terrified Nation and for providing the Faith and Peace concerts as your contribution to help us get the future we want. Inspires me.
Thank you, Debilyn. I think that I love the idea of the 5 minutes a day. I think we can be more confident and strong and less reactive when faced with worries, faced with fears. We can rise above them and really help make that future real if we do that kind of thing.
That's the whole reason we're doing this.
Yep.
So in closing today's show, I would like to thank you, the listeners of the Terrified Nation podcast, for giving a damn about our nation. We might be a terrified or hopeless or fearful nation today, but we can do better. We can save the USA. Join me next time.
So that's it for today's episode of Terrified Nation. Head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to subscribe to the show. You can get advance notice of new episodes and bonus content by signing up. Head over to terrifiednation.com and join us on the next episode.